Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Chef Kareen and I welcome you to week 5 in CU 132. Wow, man, I can't believe we're almost to Christmas break or the holiday break. It's right around the corner. I think we have one more live session before we get there. And it's been a lot of fun watching everybody grow over the past 5 weeks or 4 weeks plus this one. I think that's always an exciting opportunity. And I know Chef Kareen really loves watching everybody progress with each assignment. This class is a lot of fun because we do get to examine foods throughout the world. And I know week 4 was a big success for many of you, and I'm sure Chef Kareen has some things she'd like to share.
I do. I was really proud to see it. I tell you, everyone pretty well. It was kind of an even, I would say, with the terracotta and then the sushi balls. Usually we get a lot of the sushi balls, but I'm going to show you what I was able to fit on the PowerPoints. Just one moment. So this is the terracotta Sudan. Forgive my voice. But you see, you have a mixture of some of everything and it's colorful. This person did both. A few of the students did both, right? And the platings are looking really, really good. This student paired his with black rice. And just, I mean, the plates. I look for clean plates. That's one of the first things. And then the different designs of the plates became interesting too. So, and then look at this. Just an
Wow.
array of beautiful color. Knife
Wow.
cuts. Look at the knife cuts.
Wow. That's really impressive.
Right? Now I'm going through, as we go through the weeks, I'm trying to put some of everyone's in there. So forgive me. Sometimes I can't get everyone on there because if it's too small and it goes on the PowerPoint, you really wouldn't see it. But I just wanted you all to see this and be inspired. Continue with your knife cuts, and just like Andrew and I was just speaking in regards to practicing, don't make it a chore when it comes to your knife cuts. Just work them right into your dishes. And as you're planning your dishes, your meals, you can also think of the cuts you're going to use. Though it's very important, as we know, for visual appeal and definitely cooking consistency. But keep going, keep it up. Look at this one right here. Just really artistic, right? And the other thing is that I looked at with the Japanese, they're very strategic. Everything has its own little place, and the majority of you all put everything in that contemporary space. It's not just everywhere. You know what I mean? So you get a chance to really see each and every aspect or layer of the food. All right. So and remember, don't forget your footwear with your uniforms. Very important. So if I send you a message, just take another shot of your footwear and just post it right on in there and I'll keep growing. Graded. All right. Okay, Chef, I'm sending it back to you.
Thanks, Chef Kareen. Footwear is extremely important in the kitchen. It is a very serious safety issue. Get yourself in the habit now. One thing I noticed while looking at those photographs and the other assignments that I took a look at was the attention to detail that this class is applying to their assignments. Very, very impressive. And that is one of the keys to success in this industry is attention to detail. So hats off to all of you. I think it was a great week. Absolutely fantastic. We need to remember we're kind of getting close to the holiday break here. We need to make sure that we keep going strong. We can't go on holiday until we go on holiday, if you know what I mean. So keep yourselves going. Don't let up because you don't want to lose the chance of learning something that's going to help you succeed in the future. Ladies and gents, this week we are heading to Italy. Let's take a look at our week 5 class page. These research materials are extremely important, as are your knowledge check and your conversion knowledge check. remember that you can take those as many times as you like, and only the highest score is going to stick. So everybody should have a 10 straight across the board on those. And then these articles, Italian food culture, flavors of Italy, olive oil 101, and balsamic vinegar 101, all contain a lot of really cool information that's going to help you make selections when you get into purchasing once you're in industry. It really pays dividends to understand what you're buying, because if you pick up the phone and you tell your purveyor, hey, send me some balsamic vinegar, only God knows what you're going to get. But if you read these articles, you're going to have an understanding of exactly what extra virgin olive oil is, what balsamic vinegar is, and the quality that you're looking for. So definitely pay attention to those. It's really going to help you out. Thank you, everybody, for being here for tonight's live session. As usual, this will be posted on the class page shortly following. And then this week, we have 2 assignments. 2. It's not a choice of this week. It's a little different because both recipes combine to create one dish. So we are going to be doing both items, both the polenta and the bolognese. So very, very important. Ladies and gents, this week we have a very nice PowerPoint presentation that was put together by Chef Jamie Palafax. You must give credit where credit is due. And speaking of that, when you come back from your fall break, she will be, or no, I'm sorry, your holiday break, she will be taking this class over for me as I've been recruited back to industry, so to speak. So I'm going back home because as a chef, I love to cook and I need to be around food. And I also do a lot of programming and directing and all that kind of good stuff. And so I'm heading back home, so to speak. Yeah. So ladies and gents, let's take a look at our PowerPoint for this week. This is really cool. I love Italy. I think they've had such a tremendous influence on our cuisine here in the United States. Not only in the United States, but the entire world. Back in the late 1990s, all the way through till about 2010, Mediterranean cuisine was very big in the United States. And it's really interesting to note that the wave of Italian food here in the US really began after World War II, when the soldiers returned back home and they had pasta and everything else. And then with all the immigrants that had already come to the United States, those two things came together, and then just Italian restaurants just started opening up left and right. So ladies and gents, taking a look at the country of Italy, right? So they call it the boot, and this is why. If you take a look at the shape of the country, all the way up to the north, they have Switzerland and Austria, right? And then over here to the east, you get into Serbia, Croatia, and then over to the west, you get into France. And then down here, Algeria, Tunisia, I always, a little tongue twisted there. And then all the way down into Sicily. So this is the country of Italy. When I think of Italy, and when someone comes and they say, I want Italian food, it is such a separated country by geography, by what they serve. Always remember that. I don't believe in the term Italian food. It is very, very regional cuisine. In the north of Italy, you're going to primarily find that they do a lot of rice dishes. They eat a lot of dairy up in that neck of the woods. They produce a lot of cheeses as well. And then down in the center of the country, you still have a lot of wheat influences, a lot of wine influences, and then down to the very south into Palermo and into Sicily, that's where you get really heavy pasta dishes down in that part. So the north, we think rice. The south, we think pasta. So it's always a big separation. Couple of very important regions. Lazio, which is down to the west in the central coast of Italy. A lot of vegetables, a lot of the eggplant, artichoke, and zucchinis, different varieties of squashes, very prevalent in the cuisine. And then porchetta. Porchetta is one of my most favorite dishes. There's a couple of different versions. Some rely on a whole roasted pig to do that. Other versions take a pork belly where it's pounded out, it's rolled, and it's cooked off in that fashion as well. So there's a couple different variations that you might run across. And then Campania, which is down in the southwest part of the country. Big volcano down there, so they have a totally different soil, and that's where the famous San Marzano tomato comes from. San Marzano tomatoes have started to make a big stance here in the United States. Remember that when you buy San Marzano tomatoes, make sure that the can says DOP, which is the official designation of the producers in Italy, which signifies and certifies that they came from the San Marzano region and that they are San Marzano tomatoes. It's very, very important. And also in that country of Campania is Naples, right? And Naples is where they say pizza got its start. So Napoleon-style pizza is traditionally very thin, very crispy, and so that is the home to the pizza. And then Sicily down here to the south. This is where one of my most favorite places is, Palermo. I sold one of my restaurants to a family from Palermo, which is a very interesting experience. But they do a lot of pasta in that neck of the woods. That's a very popular dish for them, as is veal and rabbit. So they also do a lot of different tomato sauces in that region. And then continuing on, let's take a look at Emilia, which is up in the north, Bologna, right up in this area. They do a lot of cured meat, and this is where one of the most famous dishes comes from, or not dishes, but meats, which is prosciutto di Parma. You oftentimes see prosciutto sold in the United States. However, most likely it is produced domestically. It has to be called prosciutto di Parma, and it must be certified by the Italian government in order to be called prosciutto di Parma, which is produced there. They also produce the Parmigiano Reggiano, which is one of my most favorite hard ripened cheeses, which shreds and also peels into very beautiful slices. I absolutely love that. And then Lombardy up in the north region up here, it's very close to Switzerland. You're going to find that they serve a lot of polenta in that area. They also do a lot of rice dishes in that area as well. Polenta is made from corn, and we're going to learn all about that here in just a few minutes. And cheeses. They produce one of my most favorite cheeses in the world, and that's called Taleggio. Taleggio cheese, you probably should have a defibrillator by your side if you eat it, because it is a little bit high in fat, but it is worth every bite. And that's also where provolone cheese comes from as well. And then Tuscany, we all love Tuscany, right? I always think about wine country when I think about Tuscany. They do a lot of sheep's milk cheeses, which is very, very common there. Pecorino Romano being one of the most popular that they produce there. They do a lot of different salads, panzanella, which is kind of a bread type salad, or even larger croutons in place of the lettuces. So that's very, very cool form of food. And it's a very wealthy region as well up in that area in Tuscany. And then, ladies and gents, common ingredients that we find both in the north and the south in Italy. Let's take a look at some of those dishes, their flavors. Pasta. Obviously, we all know about pasta. There's hundreds of different varieties, and we'll talk about a couple of those here in just a few minutes. Wines from Italy. Italy is a major wine producing region, just like Spain is, which is a couple doors down to the west. Nebbiolo is one of my most favorite grapes from Italy. Sangiovese as well. So they produce a lot of very big red wines. Nebbiolo is bigger than a steak with pepper. Sangiovese has also got a lot of good hardness flavor. Prosecco is a fantastic sparkling wine as well. Very similar to champagne, but a little bit more on the dry side. Wonderful for mimosas. And then, ladies and gents, olive oil. right? Lots of olive oil coming out of Italy and Spain, which we're going to learn about here in a few minutes. Obviously, garlic is a big flavor. Garlic is an interesting thing to talk about, and we teach this quite a bit. A lot of people think garlic has one flavor, and depending on how you use garlic, whether it be sliced, whether it be crushed, whether it be minced, whether it be chopped, all of those varieties are going to have different flavors in your food. So always remember that when you're working with garlic, you can get multitudes of different flavors depending on how you process it. Lemons, citrus, all citrus is very, very popular in Italy. Capers. Capers are a preserved berry from a bush, and they're rather salty in nature, and they add a great savory flavor to foods. And you see them quite a bit, everything from tapenade to veal scallopini, very, very popular in Italian cuisine. Anchovies, left and right, everywhere. And then soft and hard cheeses. We talked about that taleggio, which is a soft cheese, a great melting cheese. Provolone, which is also a soft ripened cheese, but more on the firm side. That's great for shredding or slicing. Then you get into their hard cheeses like the Pecorino Romano cheese, the Asiago cheese, and then of course the famous Parmesan cheese, which all come in different, from different regions. Porcini mushrooms. A lot of foresting going on in Italy, and they do produce quite a few mushrooms, especially up towards the northern region of the country, where it's a little bit more humid. Porcini are very, very popular mushrooms. And then, of course, let's not forget balsamic vinegar, which I think has kind of ridden its course here in the United States. We're starting to see the usage of that declining. Balsamic vinegar is a vinegar that's very high in sugar. It reduces very well and thickens very well. There are multitudes of different varieties, from aged to white to the black. So depending on what your application is, make sure you choose the right vinegar. Does anybody have any questions? Charmaine, what's going on?
Yeah, I have a question. What exactly would you use balsamic vinegar for? Like, what are they most common for?
Well, there's a lot of different applications for balsamic vinegar. One of them would be a gastrique sauce, which you could use to brighten a savory dish. A gastrique sauce is a sweet and sour French reduction. And then a lot of uses within garmager, especially for salad dressings. A caprese salad has olive oil on it traditionally, but it's sprinkled with a little bit of balsamic. It's absolutely fantastic. They make what they call Italian butter, which is olive oil with balsamic drizzled right into the center. And then that is what we dip bread in frequently in Italy. That's very, very common. Reductions to make sauces with the balsamic vinegar is also very, very used. And then we also will reduce it in industry and use it as a basting or a glaze on certain cuts of meat, such as pork. It really brightens up the flavor. So good question, Charmaine.
Can you also I have another question. Can you use it like in your pastas and stuff like that, or no?
You can use it in your pastas. However, you do have to be a little bit careful there because the dark balsamic vinegar will traditionally, it gives it almost kind of a grayish color. So I wouldn't recommend, unless you're doing a cold pasta salad, like a rotini pasta salad, then you could make your vinaigrette with that balsamic. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Chef.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gents, a couple of the dishes. This up here in the corner is saltimbocca, which is a very, very popular Italian dish. Traditionally, it can either be a chicken or a veal cutlet that's been sauteed. It can have a little bit of fresh mozzarella and sage on it. And then, of course, the pizza from Sicily to Naples. It's all different. And it's the really interesting thing about pizza in Italy. It is radically different than the pizza we have in the United States. Here in the United States, we like to really sweeten up our sauce, and we love ingredients on our pizzas, right? The meat lovers. Where did that come from, right? But if you go to Italy, especially Naples or down into Sicily, you're going to notice that there's very few ingredients on the pizza. which allows you to taste the ingredients that are on the pizza. Imagine that. And they don't sweeten their tomato sauce. Commonly, tomato sauce for pizza in Italy is made with just a puree of San Marzano tomatoes, maybe a touch of olive oil, maybe a little bit of salt, maybe a leaf of basil in there, but that's about the extent of the sauce. And then the cheeses are generally pretty pure, a fresh mozzarella that's a little bit on the drier side with a little bit less water, and that's about it. And those pizzas are the best. And right here is a prime example of one. This is porchetta, which is one of my most favorite dishes with the butcher tie right there. And then we have some ossobuco. Ossobuco is a very common dish there, which is a veal shank that has been dusted in flour, seared, and then we'll add mirepoix, then we'll deglaze and remove all the fond off the pot. We'll deglaze with a stronger red wine, and then add demi-glaze and let it braise, and the meat just falls off the bone. It's absolutely delicious. And yes, in Italy, they like to drink, right? So there's a lot of different distilled beverages that are produced in conjunction with the wine industry, but they say the digestives are extremely, very important part of their culture. Digestives being an alcoholic beverage made from aromatics or botanicals that are said to be drank after the meal that encourage good digestion. So I don't know if that's justification to have a drink after dinner or if it actually works or not. So it's always kind of hard to tell. Ladies and gents, let's talk pasta here for a moment. Pasta comes in many different varieties. Pasta can be made with egg. It can be made without egg. It can be made with salt, without salt. A couple of things right off the bat. Normally, you will see durum semolina on the package as to the type of flour that they are using. So durum is the type of wheat. Semolina is the type of grind. So don't forget that. It's just not regular all-purpose flour, although all-purpose flour works perfectly well. That's not a problem. When we add salt to boiling water for pasta, does anybody know why we do that? Does anybody? Anyone? A lot of people like to add salt to pasta water when we cook pasta. And a lot of people are under the assumption is to flavor the pasta. And that's not necessarily true, because if we needed to flavor the pasta, we'd probably flavor the pasta when we make the pasta. So by adding salt to the water, it actually increases the boiling temperature of the water, which helps to extract additional starch matter from the pasta. Charmaine, what's going on?
So when you say seasoning the pasta, are you only allowed to use just like salt to season the pasta, or can you use like garlic salt, or can you use like there's a thing that I have been recently introduced to through my relatives. It's called it's like a chicken seasoning.
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Are you like, is that a thing that you can use to season the pasta? Like I've seen it, but I don't know if it's a thing.
My recommendation in this area is to proceed with caution, because the purpose of pasta on the plate is to transport the sauce, which has all the flavor, right? And it also provides texture and mouth feel. Once you start adding all these different flavors and seasonings to the pasta, you twerk the dish and things just don't seem to flow very well. So a lot of people will add chlorophyll, which they will extract from parsley or from spinach, which will give it a nice green color. We will extract beet juice and add that to the pasta dough, which will give it a nice pink color. I made tortellonis the other day where I work, and I put fresh pureed turmeric in there, which gave it a beautiful yellow color. But it wasn't for the flavor, and neither are the other items for the flavor. It is for purely the aesthetic value. So you just might want to stick with that. Does that answer your question, Charmaine?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Chef.
You're welcome. All right, ladies and gents, some of the more popular types of pasta. fettuccine, tagliatelle, and linguine. Those are heavier pastas, wider noodles that are designed to carry heavier sauces, right? So you don't want to be making a primavera pasta using tagliatelle pasta, right? Primavera pasta would just be a little bit of olive oil, some fresh seasonal vegetables in there. You're going to want to use a heavier cream sauce like a gorgonzola cream sauce. Gorgonzola cheese is a blue style cheese that comes from the northern part of Italy. We'll saute some garlic and shallots, hit it with white wine cream, and then finish it with gorgonzola cheese and the tagliatelle. And that tagliatelle is a nice wide noodle that helps transport it. Fettuccine Alfredo, we've all heard of that many, many times. That's a nice heavy sauce as well. Linguine, you can kind of go either way because that's a little bit of a thinner noodle. The clams are oftentimes served with linguine, and those clams will either be in white wine or a little bit of olive oil. So it's kind of up to you. Some of the extruded types of pasta, spaghetti, bucatini, capellini, those are traditionally thinner pastas, right? Capellini also being called angel hair, bucatini also in the same category. Those are the types of things that you're going to serve with olive oil based sauces, very light sauces for those dishes. The cylinder shaped pastas, the most common are going to be the penne and the rigatoni. Those are great dishes. We've all had baked ziti, which is a style of penne pasta, very common. Rigatoni pasta with bolognese sauce. You can't beat that. It's a nice heavy sauce. And then there are a ton of specialty shapes, fusilli, orsacchiotti, which is another very popular shape. And then other handmade shapes would be the orecchiette, the pici, and then cavatelli pasta, and the list goes on and on and on. So just the whole point of this is to make sure that you choose the right pasta for the right sauce, and just don't go out there and just don't pair any pasta with any sauce because they all have specific purposes. Very, very important. Ladies and gents, does anybody have any questions? Charmaine, did you have another question?
Yes, sorry, I keep raising my hand, but
That's okay, no problem.
Yeah, so technically we would have to memorize which one would be good for light sauces and which one would be good for vinaigrette sauces or stuff like that. Like, do we have to memorize which one? Like, I use bow ties to mix with like clam shells, or like, is there like a specific way to memorize the whole thing on how to go about? Sorry,
Wide with heavy, thin with light. That's as simple as it gets.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. So I try to still stay familiar with which ones are, like, how can you tell which ones are heavy and which ones aren't? Is it the thickness, or is it the
width of the pasta?
Width?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
tagliatelle being the widest, and then capellini or angel hair being the thinnest.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Okay.
The thinner the pasta, the lighter the sauce. The thicker the pasta, the heavier the sauce.
Okay, so I wouldn't be able to use like a mushroom sauce for a angel hair, or would I not?
If you're going to do it like in an olive oil base or a white wine base, then absolutely.
Okay. Now I better understand. Okay, thank you again, Chef. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. No problem. All right, ladies and gents, let's talk a little etiquette here before we get into our recipes this week. This is kind of interesting, and I've always been blown away by this fact. But they say in the afternoon in Italy, do not put milk into your coffee because it could potentially cause your stomach to become upset. So we get into a lot of espressos and all these other types of drinks in the afternoon. Lattes and cappuccinos are primarily reserved for the morning. So we'll talk about espresso here real quick. And for many years in the industry, we'd always come running in, and the first thing we do is fire up the espresso machine and sit there and nurse on it for a couple of hours until we were up and going, under the assumption that espresso has a lot of caffeine in it. The reality is that one shot of espresso has about 75 milligrams of caffeine. The further you roast a coffee bean, the less caffeine that it has. An espresso roast or a French roast or an Italian roast is a very dark roast of bean, hence a lower amount of caffeine. Whereas when you get into the American varieties of coffee, a cup of Folgers coffee comes in right around 250 milligrams of caffeine per serving versus an espresso at 75 milligrams of caffeine per serving. So if you have a friend that drinks a shot of espresso, then all of a sudden turns around and starts acting all shaky, you might want to call them out on that, because now you know, right? So the further you roast a coffee bean, the less caffeine that it has, right? So a cup of American coffee has about 2.5 to 3 times as much caffeine as one espresso. Very important to know that. Bread, ladies and gentlemen, in Italy is meant to be eaten with your food. It is to accompany your pasta, right? It is a condiment to your pasta. Traditionally, it is not to be eaten by itself. If they want you to eat it by itself, they will serve you something to eat with it by itself. So we just talked about Italian butter, which is very common, which is traditionally extra virgin olive oil with a little bit of balsamic vinegar in there. You mix that up on the plate, and then you dunk your bread into that. If they do not serve it with the bread, it is rude to ask for it with the bread. So that is a little bit of etiquette. And then here in Italy as well, it is a major breach of etiquette for a server to bring you your bill and clear your table as soon as you're finished with the food. They do not do that, because when we clear a table in the restaurant industry, that is a sign that, hey, we want somebody else to be sitting there. In Italy, it is acceptable for you to linger, drink coffee after your meal, or maybe have one of those digestives. Maybe that'll help you out. So until you ask for your bill, or until you ask for your dishes to be cleared away, the waiter just has to stand by and chill out. So just remember that if you ever get over to that country. Any questions, ladies and gents, about Italy? All right, everybody, let's take a look at this week's assignment. We have ragu alla bolognese. Bolognese is a traditional meat sauce. This is not a recipe that you want to start next Tuesday night. Please, it is a sauce that takes time, right? It is not an instant sauce. You have to let it cook for a long period of time for those flavors to fully mature. So give it plenty of time to cook. It's a nice meat sauce. The mirepoix that you are going to cut with this in the recipe, which we're going to go out all over here in just a moment, make sure that your knife cuts are consistent. Because if they're not, they should be at least a small dice, if not even a little bit smaller than that. A small dice is a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch. If you have a wide variety of sizes of cuts, everything is going to cook inconsistently, and you're going to have a completely different flavor profile based on the amount of surface that is exposed during the cut. Consistency is huge, and I can see Chef Corrine over there already. She's winking her eye, because when she's looking at your bolognese sauce this week, she's going to get a ruler out and she's going to check it out. See, she's got a magnifying glass. She just doesn't bring it to the live session. So, ladies and gents, we're also going to be working with polenta this week. Polenta, I guess when I think of polenta, I always think about it as a porridge, right? Polenta can be served in 2 different forms, or 3 actually. Polenta can be a porridge, almost like I guess a hominy, or like a thick grits type dish would be a pretty close association. Another style will also produce it a little bit firmer by adding a little bit less liquid, letting it cook for a little bit longer of time, and then we'll press it as it cools. We'll cut it into shapes and we'll fry it, and we'll make a polenta cake, which is kind of crispy, and I really enjoy that. Or you can cut it after it's cooled and then brush it with a little bit of olive oil and throw it onto your grill. And that also makes a nice presentation. But I really like the porridge. That's kind of my most favorite. It is a dish that can be made with water and stock, water or stock, butter, and polenta grind cornmeal. Polenta grind cornmeal is a little bit more coarse. Do not substitute a fine cornmeal for this recipe. It is not good. right? Because traditionally it's a little bit of a larger grind of cornmeal. American style cornmeal is about as small as you want to get, and you have to allow it to cook over your low heat for a few minutes. So make sure you pay attention to the cornmeal. We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, go ahead, Chef Crane. I've been talking a lot because I know you have laryngitis. So
It's okay.
yeah.
It's okay. So I with the ragu of bolognese, Carrie's making fun of your accent with the espresso. She's gonna really kill me with my pronunciation laryngitis. Like he said, Chef said, pay attention to those knife cuts. The mirepoix is supposed to basically cook down into that protein and develop layers of flavor with that meat, right? And then you have your sauce in there. It's not supposed to be a runny sauce, right? You want to see the texture of the meat also. And then with the polenta, make sure you cook it. Because if it's not fully cooked, I can really see the grains, or we can see that it's still very grainy, and we can tell that you didn't cook it all the way. So just whether you do it on the creamy side, and by the way, when it's creamy, or maybe some Parmesan cheese grated into it, it is heaven, right?
See the look on Chef Green's face when she was saying that?
I love it. So, or you cook it and then put it in a sheet pan, pretty much layer it out, right? Maybe an inch thick, and let it chill, and then cut it into shapes. And then, like Chef said, if you do it on the grill, show us those grill marks. Show off a little bit with the grill marks, right? And then do a nice plate up with it. Do not wait until Tuesday to do your ragu alla bolognese. You need to baby it, just like the polenta.
I love it the day after.
Yeah.
I think after it cools in the refrigerator overnight, and then you warm it up the next day, I think the flavor's so much better.
They get that nice little crisp on it, maybe with a little dab of butter and olive oil. Making y'all think.
You're awesome, Chef. Thanks.
I'm going to get ready to go, guys. Have a great holiday. Hopefully when we come back on the other end, I'll still have a voice. But anyway, enjoy. And I'm looking forward to seeing your submissions. Show off on me a little bit. Y'all know I like that. All right? Chef, I'll see you on the other side. Good night, guys.
Good. All right. Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gents, let's take a look at our recipes for this week and make sure we're all on the same page. For the bolognese, prep everything out first. Have it ready to go. It'll really help you execute the recipe much better. Like Chef Kareem was talking, your onions, it should be a very fine dice, if not a brunoise. Very, very important. Brunoise is an 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch. It's a fine dice, right? So you have carrots, onion, celery. You're going to heat a large pan. Make sure it has a heavy bottom to it so it retains the heat. You're going to heat your olive oil and butter. By heating olive oil and butter together, you're going to get that nice buttery flavor, but you're going to raise the smoke point of the butter, and it's not going to burn at such a low temperature. You're going to sweat the mirepoix. And when we say sweat mirepoix, we don't want to see any color on it. Sweating the mirepoix forces the fibers to open up, and the juices come out, and it creates a different flavor than caramelization. So sweating, you should be able to see through your onions, right? They should become translucent. And then you're going to add your beef and your pork. If you don't want to use pork, that's fine. You can substitute chicken. And add your salt as well. When you add the salt to this dish, you're going to notice a lot more moisture is going to come out of your mirepoix. That's because the sodium continues to break down the fibers as well. Break down any large chunks, right? And you're going to saute it, right, for a few minutes. You don't want to have that raw color, but you don't want it to be fully brown either. At that stage, you're going to add your wine. The purpose of adding the wine is you are going to kind of scrape anything off the bottom of the pan. That's called fond. And you're going to let that cook down to what we call au sec. Au sec is spelled A-U, next word S-E-C. That is a French term that refers to almost dry. So if you're in my kitchen at my new resort and I say, hey, I want you to reduce that till au sec, then almost dry, just a little bit of viscosity left to it, and that's it. Then you're going to add your milk and your nutmeg. The lactic acid in the milk is a big player in this dish. It's going to help soften the meat, but it's also going to really help enhance the flavor. After that is almost evaporated or au sec, you're going to add your crushed tomatoes. Very important at this stage in the game that you lower your heat way down, okay? You got to think low and slow for this dish. You can't push it. It's not a 10-minute dish, right? So you're going to add your tomatoes. You're going to stir until everything thoroughly gets mixed together. Very important. And then you're going to simmer that for at least 3 to 4 hours, stirring occasionally. Every time you walk through the kitchen, just stir it one more time. Keep that heat real low. Otherwise, you're going to force that sauce to burn, and you don't want that. Make sure you stir. Right? At that point, you're going to stick your spoon in there. You're going to take a bite. Does it need more salt? Does it need pepper? What does it need? And you're going to adjust your flavor. And then once that sauce is made, you're going to make your polenta. Because guess what? The polenta goes on the bottom of the dish and the sauce goes on the top. Polenta is fairly simple to make. It doesn't require nearly as much time. Only a couple of ingredients in polenta. There's just water. Like I said earlier, if you want to use stock, you can use stock. That's perfectly fine. Polenta. If you cannot find polenta in your grocery store, just buy cornmeal. It's perfectly fine. Life goes on. Just get cornmeal. And then we have butter. It's very important. Do not use margarine in this dish. Margarine is mostly water. You need to have that fat content in there for the mouthfeel. And then you're going to have some Parmesan cheese that is shredded. Very important, because if you notice the ingredients, there's nothing really, really sharp or savory in this dish. That Parmesan cheese has a lot of monosodium glutamate in it that naturally occurs. Monosodium glutamate, or also known as MSG, will open up the palate on your tongue and will enhance the flavor of the whole dish. So remember that monosodium glutamate can be found in Parmesan cheese. It's naturally occurring, and it is not bad for you against popular opinion. Salt and pepper. So you're going to bring your water, salt to a boil, and then you're going to slowly stir in your polenta. Add it, stir it, add it, stir it, add it, stir it. Don't stop stirring, because otherwise you're going to get clumps in there that are very, very difficult to break up. You're going to keep working it until it becomes smooth. You're going to turn the heat down very low, right? Because it does get very, very thick, right? And you're going to keep stirring until it's smooth and creamy. And then you're going to stir in your butter and your Parmesan cheese. At that point, guess what you're going to do? You're going to get a spoon, taste it, make sure it's got enough salt, enough pepper, make sure it's good on the tongue. As Chef Karine and myself mentioned earlier, if you would like, it's kind of a cool technique. After your polenta is fully cooked, take a half sheet pan, a cookie tray, I guess you call it, and you're going to put a piece of parchment paper down on top of that. Spray that parchment paper with a little bit of pan spray to prevent it from sticking. You'll pour your polenta onto the parchment paper that is on top of your cookie sheet, and then you're going to spread it out nice and even, right? Kind of shake it down a little bit to make sure there's no bubbles in there. Then, if possible, put another piece of parchment paper over the top. Pan spray so it doesn't stick. Another piece of parchment paper over the top, and then another pan on top of that. And then whatever you have that's heavy laying around your kitchen, put a couple cans, maybe a rock. That'd be great to kind of help compress it. Put it into your refrigerator. It takes about an hour or so for it to cool. When it's cool, you're going to have a very firm substance, right? It's almost, you could pick up the whole sheet almost. It might break in half, but it's still going to be fairly firm. You can take circle cutters. You can take a cutter in the shape of a coyote. You can cut it into squares. You can cut it into rectangles. You can cut it into circles. You're going to turn your grill on, get it very hot. Make sure that you do brush that polenta cake with a little bit of oil, and then you're going to put it onto the grill and give it some nice grill marks. That will go on the bottom of the plate, bolognese sauce over the top. And that is the recipes for this week. Charmaine, did you have another question?
Yeah. So I've not myself personally, but I've witnessed people who have mixed puree, like pure butter, like not the margarine or anything like that, but they mixed it while cooking with olive oil. But when they did, it kind of, I don't know if they had their heat on medium heat. It wasn't on high or anything like that, and they mixed it together and it started smoking and not mixing. So what does that mean when that happens?
That means it's smoking and mixing, or smoking and burning, yeah.
Well, what is it, like, is it too high for them, or is the temperature too high, or what happened?
Yeah, the temperature would be too high. Butter has a very low smoke point, and there are a lot of butter solids. Remember that butter is 80% fat, 20% whey protein, water, and milk solids. When that 20% of whey protein, milk solids, and water is exposed to the heat, those things begin to burn very quickly. So by mixing it with olive oil, you give yourself a little bit more room in there. And remember, you're going to turn it on medium, high heat, and you're going to add your mirepoix. So all that's going to cook together. So you're not going to let it sit there in the pan.
Yeah. So, okay. So I know, well, it wasn't technically in those exact line of adding. I've only seen it where someone added, butter with oil and the whole thing was smoking, and I was like, are you sure you're okay? And I just was wondering about that. Like, it didn't make sense to me that. So when you mentioned it to me, it just kind of was like, well, is there a right temperature to add them together, or is there?
Start low, turn it on. Put the oil and the butter in there, turn it on to medium high, and then when it gets to medium high, add your mirepoix.
So I add them at the same time, or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So that's what I didn't see when I seen the whole smoking thing going on. Okay. Yeah. I seen the butter first and then the olive oil after, and everything was just smoking. There was no fire, but there was a lot of smoking. And I was just kind of worried, like, do you know what you're doing? No.
You got it. You're good. All right. Thanks, Charmaine.
All right. Thank you, Tisha.
Andrew, what's going on?
What ratio do you prefer for the ground beef?
Okay, that's a great question. Ground beef in the United States is sold by ratio, right? So when we refer to the term ratio, that is solid muscle to fat content. There are different varieties. There's a 90-10, there's an 80-20, there's a 70-30. The larger number referring to the amount of muscle matter, and the lower number referring to the amount of fat that's in the product. For example, if you buy a hamburger that's a 70-30, it's going to have a high fat content. When it cooks, it's going to shrink quite a bit because it is 30% fat, but it is going to be moist. And now, if you were doing it with 90-10, 10% being fat, it's going to be a little bit drier. You're going to have to be a little bit more conscious when cooking, and it is not going to shrink nearly as much. For this dish, 80-20 is perfectly fine. Or I've also used 70-30 for this dish, which I think is even better, because you get that mouth feel from the fat. So that is a fantastic question, Andrew. I really appreciate that. Yeah. All right, ladies and gents, let's take a look at our submission requirements for this week. So for the polenta and the bolognese, we have all of the same requirements with our mise en place sanitation, self-identification photo with footwear. Very, very important. Please do not go through the kitchen barefooted. It's not appropriate. Proper mise en place. We like to see that mise en place lined up, ready to go, just like you're going to execute it. The reason for that is, in industry, when we ask you for your mise en place, we want everything lined up and ready to go, just like you're going to cook it. Nothing in the can. That's not good. And then with the polenta, boiling water. Easy picture with the salt. Polenta in the pot. Thick polenta before adding the butter and the Parmesan cheese, and then polenta with butter and cheese. And then make sure we have 2 plates. which are going to be combined here because you're going to do your polenta here. You can grill it if you want, or you can just serve it like the grits. I like it like the grits, but you might like it like the grilled. So you're going to have your polenta on the bottom of your dish. Over the top of the dish, you're going to have your bolognese. And for that, we need to see the mirepoix sweating in the pot. Make sure that's a very fine dice. Chef Crean was asking for a brunoise, which is 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch. And then you're going to add your meat with the mirepoix. Make sure you don't brown it all the way. It's still going to be a little bit raw. And then add your wine, let it reduce to au sec. There's that word right there, au sec. And then add your milk till au sec, right? Tomatoes, simmering, and then 2 identical plates with the polenta on the bottom and then the bolognese on the top. Garnishes for this dish, keep it simple. A nice sprig of rosemary or a little bunch of basil, maybe a piece of grilled bread on the side, maybe some shaved Parmesan. It doesn't have to be shredded Parmesan. Shredded Parmesan is when you take a box grater and you shred it, right? You can take a carrot peeler and peel it, and you get those nice long shreds of Parmesan that kind of curl, and that's a very nice decoration on top of this dish as well. Any questions, ladies and gents? Anybody? I say we wrap it up. Christmas or a holiday break is almost here, guys. I think everybody's worked hard and everybody's gonna deserve a nice break. However, don't let down until we're done. So have a great evening, everybody, and take care. Bye, everybody.